On June 3, 2003, Sammy Sosa swung at a pitch and shattered his bat. The ball rolled towards second base, but when the umpires picked up the broken pieces, they found something inside the wood. Cork. In seconds, one of baseball's biggest stars had been caught using an illegal bat. But the strangest part was not only that Sosa got caught, it was how quickly that broken bat came to represent everything people had already suspected about him. 5 years earlier, Sosa had helped to turn a home run race into a national event. He smiled for magazine covers, blew kisses toward the crowd, and became one of baseball's most beloved superstars. Within a few years, he had become one of its biggest outcasts. So how did Sammy Sosa lose Chicago? And why did it take 21 years for the Cubs to finally welcome him home? Long before the home run race, Sammy Sosa was not supposed to become this kind of superstar. He reached the majors with Texas in 1989. Raw, explosive, and unfinished. Texas traded him to the White Sox. 3 years later, the South Side sent him across Chicago to the Cubs. Sosa had speed, a powerful throwing arm, and the kind of swing that can make a baseball disappear. He also struck out constantly and chased pitches nowhere near the strike zone. Then, in 1993, it began coming together. 33 home runs, 36 stolen bases, the first 30-30 season in Cubs history. The raw athlete was becoming the face of a franchise, but nothing could have prepared baseball for 1998. The 1994 players' strike had canceled the World Series and damaged baseball's relationship with its fans. Then Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa began chasing Roger Maris. Maris had hit 61 home runs in 1961. Most of the summer, McGwire looked like the man who would finally break the record. Sosa was not even the main challenger at first. At the end of May, he had 13 home runs. Then he hit 20 in June. Suddenly, every McGwire at bat became national news. Every Sosa home run tightened the race. SportsCenter updated the totals every night. Newspapers printed home run trackers, and fans who had stopped paying attention were watching again. And the two stars could not have been more different. McGwire was massive, quiet, and visibly uncomfortable with the attention. Sosa was a showman. He sprinted into right field, he tapped his heart, he blew kisses towards the camera. And when he knew a ball was gone, he leaped out of the batter's box with the hop children across the country began copying. On September 8th, McGwire hit number 62 against the Cubs and officially passed Maris.
Gone! There it is! 62! Touch first, Mark! You are the new single-season home run king!
Sosa ran in from right field and embraced him. That image became one of the defining pictures of the season. McGwire finished with 70 home runs. Sosa finished with 66. But Sosa drove in 158 runs, helped carry the Cubs into the postseason, and won the National League MVP award. He did not win the home run race though. But by the end of 1998, Sammy Sosa was one of the most famous athletes in the world. And 1998 was not a one-season miracle. Sosa hit 63 home runs in 1999. 50 in 2000, then 64 more in 2001. Here it means the only player in Major League history with 3 60 home run seasons. Across those 4 years, he hit 243 home runs. Sosa became the identity of Wrigley Field. The music, the flags, the sprint in the right, the hop, and the kisses towards the camera. Watching the Cubs meant watching Sammy. But as the numbers grew, so did the questions. Players around baseball were getting bigger, home run totals were climbing. Suspicion about performance-enhancing drugs was spreading across the sport. For Sosa, all that suspicion needed was one image people could understand: a broken bat. On June 3, 2003, against Tampa Bay, Sosa hit a routine ground ball and his bat split apart. Home plate umpire Tim McClelland examined the pieces and found cork inside the barrel. Sosa was ejected. He said the bat was used only during batting practice to put on a show for the fans, and that he grabbed it by mistake. Major League Baseball confiscated 76 other bats from his locker. Every one came back clean. The Hall of Fame tested 5 Sosa bats already in its collection. Those were clean too. Sosa received an 8-game suspension, later reduced to 7 on appeal. Studies have also found that cork does not make a ball travel farther. A lighter bat can be swung faster, but removing solid wood reduces the energy transferred into the ball. None of that changed what people had seen. Cork was inside Sammy Sosa's bat, and from that moment forward, every home run he ever hit became easier to question. If you grew up watching Sosa launch home runs out of Wrigley, you already know how complicated this story became. Subscribe for more baseball stories that deserve a closer look. The corked bat did not prove Sosa had used cork before. The other 81 bats that were examined suggested the opposite, and it did not prove steroid use, but it changed the way the public looked at him. In March 2005, Sosa appeared before Congress during a national televised hearing about performance-enhancing drugs in baseball. In a prepared statement, he denied ever taking any illegal substances. 4 years later, the New York Times reported that Sosa was among the 104 players who tested positive during baseball's anonymous 2003 survey testing. The report did not identify the substance. The testing program had been designed to measure how widespread drug use was and did not include individual punishment. But the nuance disappeared beneath the headline. By the time Sosa retired, the corked bat, the Congressional hearing, and the reported test had merged into one public verdict. He finished with 609 home runs, 2,408 hits, and 1,607 RBIs. In 2022, his 10th and final year on the Writers' Hall of Fame ballot, he received only 18.5% of the vote. He needed 75. At the same time, Sosa's relationship with the Cubs was falling apart. Chicago came within 5 outs of the World Series in 2003. But by the following season, the mood around the team had changed. Sosa's production declined, his relationship with manager Dusty Baker became strained, teammates reportedly grew tired of the loud music, the attention, and the sense that different rules applied to the team's biggest star. Then came the final day of the 2004 season. The Cubs had entered the year expecting to contend for a championship. Instead, a late collapse knocked them out of the postseason. Sosa was not in the lineup for the finale at Wrigley Field. He arrived only about 70 minutes before the first pitch. Security footage later showed him leaving roughly 15 minutes after the game began, without ever putting on his uniform. The Cubs fined him 1 day's salary, and inside the clubhouse, someone destroyed the famous boombox that had spent years blasting Sosa's music. There was no farewell ceremony, no final sprint into right field, no last ovation from the bleachers. After 13 seasons, 545 home runs, and an entire era built around his personality, Sammy Sosa's Cubs career ended with him leaving the stadium while the final game was still being played. A few months later, Chicago traded him to Baltimore. For years, Sosa existed in a strange space. He was too important to Cubs history to erase, but too controversial for the organization to celebrate. There was no retired number, no statue outside Wrigley, no plaque in Cooperstown. When the Cubs won the World Series in 2016, the organization celebrated generations of franchise history, but one of the most recognizable players ever to wear the uniform remained outside. Cubs chairman Tom Ricketts made the organization's position clear. Reconciliation required Sosa to acknowledge his past. Sosa insisted he had nothing to confess, so the silence continued year after year. For more than 2 decades, the player who had once owned right field at Wrigley remained separated from the team that made him famous. Then, on December 19th, 2024, something changed. Sosa released a statement acknowledging that there had been times during his career when he did whatever he could to recover from injuries and maintain his strength through a 162-game season. He had never broken any laws, but he also said that in hindsight, he had made mistakes, and he apologized. It was not a direct admission of steroid use, but it was the acknowledgement the Cubs had been waiting for. The organization invited him to the 2025 Cubs convention. When Sosa stepped onto the stage that January, the room erupted. Fans stood, chanted his name, and welcomed back the player many of them had never stopped loving. That same night, the Cubs announced that Sosa would enter the team's Hall of Fame. Then, on June 20th, 2025, he returned to Wrigley Field for the first time in 21 years. A tribute played on the video board. The crowd rose. Sosa tapped his heart, and once again, he blew kisses toward the Chicago fans. On September 7th, the reunion became official. Wearing the Cubs Hall of Fame's blue jacket, Sosa stood at home plate through the ceremonial first pitch and joined the 7th inning stretch. The exile was over. The relationship was not repaired because everyone finally agreed on exactly what happened. It was repaired because, after 21 years, both sides decided they were ready to move forward. As Sosa tapped his heart and blew kisses towards the crowd, Chicago finally welcomed Sammy home. Now the final question is yours. Does Sammy Sosa belong in Cooperstown? Tell me why, yes or no, down in the comments below.